Look at that.
Hell yeah.
All right. Okay, we all settled in? Let's get into our first topic. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, these last few years have been quite the roller coaster for everyone. Firms have had to tackle a host of changes from the rapid acceleration of remote work and tools, as well as just being on the ground fighting day in and day out to keep small businesses' doors open. However, we've also seen some really positive changes come out, both for our client relationships and for our team. So I'm kind of curious to hear your stories about how you've handled these changes. So first question, JJ, we'll start with you. How has the acceleration of a distributed workforce transformed your firm's operations and your client interactions, and what positive changes have emerged as a result?
That's a great question. I think really two main things when I think about what we've kind of seen accelerate, as you mentioned. I think these changes were coming, but I think we sped them up by maybe a decade or so with everything that was going on. But two things, I think one, we're more protective of our time now, and I think that's a good thing. I think our customers are more conservative about the time that they want to give us, and they want a value for that time. And then I think us as well, we maybe don't have to spend as much time commuting anymore, things like that. So I think we are a lot more considerate of that, and then also considerate of value. So I think we think about now going and meeting in person and having those big consulting meetings, that we can charge for that, and that's something that our customers are willing to pay for. And if they're not, it's good to know that. So I think it's no longer showing up to the office and going and getting a cup of coffee and making the rounds and all of a sudden it's time for lunch. That's no longer a work day. We're a lot more productive, I think, and a lot more cognizant of that production, which leads to, I think, an opportunity for additional value consideration, which I think is a good thing for all of us.
That's awesome. It sounds like flexibility and choice have been a huge boon for the team.
Absolutely.
Thanks for kicking us off.
Of course.
Kenji, your firm was already fully remote before the pandemic, before all these changes. So was it just smooth sailing for you, or were there some changes and challenges you had to manage through as well?
Yeah, you'd think that being fully virtual, well in advance of things that have happened in the past few years, we'd be totally ready. But we weren't. I mean, I think you end up finding out that yes, we knew how to do video meetings and kind of work from home offices and things like that. The thing I think we weren't prepared for, and probably nobody was suddenly now we have team members who are stepping into also additional roles of not just serving clients, but they're caregivers maybe for others. They're having to be teachers for kids and things at home. So yeah, it was challenging for sure, even though we had a bit of a jump on things. But one of the interesting things was because we were a little bit ahead, it did change some of the client interactions we had. I think some of our clients actually, we were able to talk to them about things we had done as a firm, because now they're faced with having to figure out this whole virtual remote world, and they're kind of going, hey, well, my accounting firm, you guys are already doing this. Can you maybe help us out a little bit, give us some pointers or tips? So we had some great conversations, completely not accounting related, just about how are we helping each other as fellow small business owners, candidly, really operate virtually kind of in this new place. So those were actually really a good outcome out of that.
That's awesome. Thank you. And then Shane and Jennifer, I'm curious, how have evolving client relationships shaped your firm's services over the course of the last couple of years? Maybe Shane, we'll start with you, and then Jennifer.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so one thing that's really interesting about going totally remote, like Kenji's firm, is that now clients can work with any firm around the country. As they get more and more used to it, they're going to realize that if I can work with any firm in the country, I should probably work with the best at whatever problem I have, what specific issue I'm having. So our firm is super niche. I expect other firms to get more niched as the people change their habits when it comes to shopping. And before the pandemic, the majority of our clients were in Brooklyn, and now only 17% of them are from the greater New York area. They're all over the country. Our employees are in 15 different states as well. So not only can you get clients that want the best firm in the country for that specific issue, but you can also reach out to talent around the country that is really on point with your mission and really aligns with it and has the background and experience to drive that niche forward and really contribute to the services you're providing for those clients.
How about you, Jennifer?
Yeah, it was strange because there was this explosion of virtual accounting services, but I strangely felt this pull toward this humanizing of the relationship that we have with our clients. And the best example I can think of is I had a client who owned a garden center, a large garden center. We were working through PPP with him. He had a lot of seasonal employees, so rather complex. And he just went quiet on us. And come to find out a few days later that he was in the hospital, thought he had a heart attack. It was a severe panic attack. And I think we know this at some level, but what we do impacts more than just a business. It is very personal to our clients. And so that really brought it home for me. And so he ended up being absolutely fine. Garden centers open, and everyone and their mom became a master gardener that year. So he was totally fine. But at the same time, like, I was there when they opened to support him even further, and that really solidified that relationship. So I love the virtual aspect of what we do now, but at the same time, I think there is really something special about being able to be there and be there in person with your clients. And I also feel like we're just spending so much time trying to put accounting in a box where, is it virtual, is it in person, what's better? I'm not sure if we're gonna find the right answer. I think we just need to be really honest with what are the limitations and opportunities within either model.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that story with us as well. It's those moments that really stick with you about the impact that you have on that client, on that business, on their family. So thank you for sharing that. Let's move maybe a little bit into our next section on talent. As we talk about the evolving expectations of our clients, how our firms are changing, it's impossible to have that conversation without talking about the talent that we find and recruit and retain in our firms. It's really a critical part of how we serve clients. So I'm curious. We've all seen the articles in the news about shortage of finding talent, fewer people choosing accounting as a profession. Jennifer, maybe we'll start with you. I'm curious, how has your firm experienced this, and how are you dealing with some of the challenges that are coming along with it?
Well, we were preparing for this. Shane and I were talking about how the pool of candidates is actually growing because we can draw from people with different backgrounds and different skill sets. And I think that's really exciting because bringing people with different skills to a CAS practice means that we can add a lot of value to our clients in different ways. But one thing that we've been doing and that we're focused on is, even if we have this infinite pool, we still have to attract from that pool into the industry. And so at CLA, my firm, one of the things we did this past summer is we launched our first high school internship program. And it really wasn't about padding our pipeline. Do I think some of those students will become employees of CLA? Maybe, but probably not, to be honest. I mean, I talked to one student, and he wanted to go into space engineering and actually build rockets. And I was like, okay, well, when you do that, you're gonna need a budget. And a budget's very important, depending on who you're building a rocket for. So like, just bringing in, just explaining that accounting is more than, the profession is more than just what you think about in tax. It really is woven in through all different types of aspects of accounting. And so it was a small step that our firm has taken, but we have to start somewhere to try to bring awareness to what the industry really is and to change the perception.
And thank you. And Kenji, when we were talking about this in our conversation as well, your perspective is a little bit different than Jennifer unpacked. So as you read those articles, what is your reaction to it? I mean, are you feeling the crunch of that talent practice, or is it maybe fake news or a little bit overblown?
Well, you got to look out for fake news and things. But no, it's not fake news, but I think that the data does show, right? We're seeing fewer people enter the profession. And so I think the challenge there is that really what I care about? What we care about as firm owners and leaders is, where can we bring talent into our firms? And so if I look at that, yes, it's kind of interesting as a news story that there are few, and I think most of the news stories focus about U.S. students entering U.S. universities in accounting programs. Okay, so maybe there's fewer going there, but in the large scale of it, have we had any challenges really hiring talent recently? And the answer has been no. So I think that yes, there may be fewer people entering the profession through traditional means, and it's great to hear about other non-traditional means, but it's been more than offset for us as a firm by our access to the global talent that we weren't able to tap into years ago. So I do think there's some kind of news cycle, news hype around this that makes for an easy story in the profession, and it's something we should all keep our eyes on, but it has not, for us, impacted our ability to find great people.
Interesting. It's fascinating to hear the different perspectives too, and I think one common thread there is, yes, it's real, but there's also different ways to sort of manage through it, right? Thinking about different geographic footprints, thinking about different age groups, thinking about different areas where you're going and looking for talent as well. So building on that sort of common thread, I'm curious, maybe we start to think a little bit more about strategies, and starting with you, Shane, what are some of the strategies that you found effective in hiring and retaining talent as we've managed through some of these challenges?
Yeah, it's hard in a remote environment, right? It's changed. Everything's changed when it comes to attracting talent. Only 2 of our 30 employees are now in the New York area where we got started. So we've expanded, to Kenji's point, outside of the United States. We now operate in 3 countries. Some of my favorite talent is in the Philippines, frankly. They're some of our best employees. They're fantastic. I've met some amazing Mexican accountants as well.
You can clap.
Yeah.
Yes. But when it comes to attracting new talent, I think that it's really important to get your culture out there, right? Because if you're going to be working totally remotely, they can work for any firm in the country, right? So your culture is going to have a big impact, not only the type of work that you do, but also what it's going to be like to work there. And if you can get that out there, you can attract talent better, right? Better fits for you. And one thing that really worked for us, accidentally actually, is we had a podcast intended to attract prospects to the firm. It was just me and my business partner, 30 minutes a week. We would break down the news, have some laughs, and really, it turned out into us just kind of hanging out. And whenever our candidates would come and they would go to our website and they would see what the culture was like kind of like seeing into the soul of the company through how the owners acted, it resonated with the right candidates for us. And the people that would join knew what they were getting into, a couple of weirdos running the firm. So that worked really well for us, like out of nowhere. So that was our strategy.
And were they podcasts or video podcasts or both?
Video podcast,
Video
yeah, it's on
podcast.
YouTube. Yeah. There's
Awesome.
hundreds of hours of my face just talking about Elon Musk and Bitcoin and all.
Smash that like button. Followed. Yeah.
You just got 3,000 new followers, I think.
Exactly.
Like and
Liquidity
subscribe.
events.
How about you, JJ? Any luck with the podcast, or what strategies have you found have worked?
So I love being a podcast guest. We don't host one yet, but hearing Shane's success, and I think he's nailed it on the differentiation with culture. I think, again, great talent does have choices now, and I think having opportunities to be differentiated inside of our firms is important. For us, we've really looked at ways to encourage our folks that work with us to develop themselves beyond just the typical CPE. I love the CPE. Thank you, Intuit. Please keep it up. Certainly like getting that box checked for credentialing, but for us, it's really about how do our team members need to grow individually, and whether or not that has CPE credits is kind of irrelevant to us. So we've done things like allowed our managers to enroll in like a Toastmasters course, for example, not CPE, but helps them get the skills that they need to do the advisory work that we're doing. So some of the things that are a little bit outside of maybe traditional CPE. And then we've also thought differently about changing the mindset around how we make time. I talked earlier about prioritizing differently and protecting our time more. And so we've encouraged our team to think about what can free up your time to make time for that development and growth. We're big fans of the CMA at our firm. A lot of our folks have already gotten the CPA, so signing up for another 90 plus hours of studying, not exactly high on their list of things to do. So we've actually, instead of just doing a reimbursement program, we pay for the support in their household to be able to make the time to study. So things like paying for grocery delivery or paying for a babysitter, to make that time and make that margin so that they can get the skills and the resources to develop what they really want to do.
That's huge. And are those recent changes that you've just introduced?
They are. That's in the last year that we've done that. And again, it's really back to that culture. We want to encourage different thinking, different mindset, different behavior. And so we're trying to kind of put our money where our mouth is in that regard.
And are you using those, that's a very innovative approach to training and to development. It sounds like not only within the industry, but also within your firm. Mm-hmm. Are you also using that as a recruiting tool to attract new talent?
We are. So we want folks, again, we want highly aligned customers and we want highly aligned team members. We think that makes for a very profitable firm. So for us, we absolutely want folks who look at CPE and the opportunity that we think personal development is important, whether or not it checks a CPE box.
Yeah.
We want folks who are excited about that. Somebody who just wants to go on December 29th and take a bunch of tests, that's a way to do it, but that's not the type of person who's going to get excited about what we're doing. So absolutely, it's a differentiator for us.
Fascinating. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Note to self, start podcast tomorrow.
Yes.
Okay.
And subscribe and like.
And subscribe and like, turn on notifications. Yeah. Perfect. All right, let's move on. Thanks for shedding light on both the challenges as well as the talent piece of it. It's really interesting to hear, and I think there's a lot of folks in the audience right now who are kind of wrestling with some of these same challenges too. Speaking of the evolution piece, I like to shift. I call this part we're about to go into the crystal ball and magic wand moment. So put on your magic cap. Let's start with looking forward. If we look forward sort of 5 to 8 years, what do you think will be the shape of the accounting industry and accountants, and what do you believe will be essential for future success? JJ, we'll start with you.
Sure. So we talked a little bit earlier about how we all have kind of different perceptions on what we're seeing, and I think the 5 to 8 years, we are going to see a shortage of accountants. I think the cavalry is not coming, and I think technology has got to stand in that place. And I think that's actually a good thing. I think we are going to be able to use technology to get there with the debits and credits, right? We're not going to be able to any longer kind of be productive by doing bank reconciliations. The computers will do that before we get there, and that allows us to do more advisory work and allows us to think differently about how we can support and help our clients. You've heard beautiful stories about client relationships and adding value well beyond just the debits and credits and reports. So I think when the computers can take that piece of it off of our plate, it frees us up to learn new things, new skills, and that's what I think is critical. Again, we talked about our strategies to do that. Over the next 5 to 8 years, as firm owners, we need to be encouraging our folks to grow and develop those skills. And as people working inside of firms, being proactive about getting those new skills, but being thoughtful about not, we talked earlier about not really trying to be a fish that climbs a tree, right? That's not going to be a good fit. Find things that are already in your natural kind of lane and things that you enjoy and that you want to learn and grow in, and get those skills ramped up so that technology can take the kind of easier stuff from you and you can be more advisory and value add.
And it's building towards that future of work, future of the workplace. Yeah. Kenji, how about you? What's your perspective? What is your magic ball or your crystal ball telling you about the next 5 to 8 years?
Well, I guess building off of what was just mentioned by JJ is I love how you and your firm have really looked for more innovative ways to educate and bring development to your team. But it concerns me, I think, when we see these numbers of people declining entering the profession. And the CPA exam is really hard, right? We know this. And I have no problem with things being difficult if we have a high bar, and for a high bar for expectations of what we expect from ourselves in the profession. When that high bar starts becoming a barrier to people entering our profession, that's a problem. And that concerns me, frankly, that we need to really adapt some of the education, some of the ways that maybe young people look to enter the profession, that it's not a barrier. Yes, it's a high bar to achieve over, but right now I think we have to look at how relevant are some of those things that are at the entryway into our profession, and are those attracting new entrants to the profession, or is it repelling them and pushing them away because the barriers have become too high? So I'm optimistic, ultimately, if more folks do, if our governing bodies could do more of what you're doing, JJ, but in the meantime, I do get concerned that we're going to have continued barriers if they don't address some of these issues with CPE and the CPA exam.
Fascinating, yeah. So that's a nice segue, actually, into it's a big potential change, right? And so this is where magic wands can be very, very helpful. So as we wrap up, let's think about that. Shane, I'm really interested in your perspective. If you had a magic wand, what would be one thing that you would change about the accounting profession, and what would the impact be?
Yeah, I think accounting has a sexiness problem. I dropped out.
Present company excluded. Let's be clear.
Thank you, JJ. What's up, y'all? So I really wish at 23, 24, 25, I had known at my age now what was possible. I actually dropped out of accounting. I had a quarter-life crisis. I was working at Big Four. My partner at Big Four was driving me around in the Toyota Corolla and working 80 hours a week. I had what kind of role model am I looking up to here? Awesome guy, but I just didn't realize the amount of flexibility and frankly the amount of income and the type of lifestyle you could have in the profession. And I bet a bunch of 18-year-olds don't either.
Yeah.
So I just really wish that there was a way for us to, I'm sure a lot of you here are enjoying your lives, loving your lives in the accounting profession, have a ton of friends here. I just didn't know this was possible. Yeah. So I don't know how we get that outreach out to young people. I think it would help a lot.
Bring them here.
That's right.
Yeah.
Amen.
How about you, Jennifer?
Yeah, there's so many bad headlines right now about the industry, and I think that there's truth to that. There's truth underneath that, and we need to address those things. But there's also so many positive things that we need to highlight. Coming here to events like this, talking about the interesting clients we serve, talking about the complex problems that we solve, opening for Ryan Reynolds. These are cool things we get to do in our profession. So, so we need to blend in those good news stories, because I genuinely enjoy what I do, and I imagine that this room does too, because otherwise you wouldn't be here trying to make yourself better at what you do. So we need to do a better job of addressing the difficulties that we are having as a profession, but making sure that we highlight and illuminate all the good news stories as well.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, we are at time, and we've heard some really diverse and amazing perspectives today from our panelists that have one constant in common, which is change. Our industry is changing, the talent market is changing, and technology is really accelerating these shifts. And with change comes challenge, but also opportunity. It's an opportunity to think about what kind of change do you want, and how will you help to bring it about? It's an opportunity here as you continue to connect for the next couple of days to continue the dialogue and really start to advance that forward for the industry as well. With that, I'd like to thank our panelists. Thank you, the audience, for listening, and enjoy the rest of the program.